I should thank Sadahak for having me here and to talk about LGBT issues, as she said. And I should also thank for my talk not being censored, which usually happens. Sometime back, I've been invited a week before to one of the largest India's IT company by their diversity and inclusion team, and my talk has been actually gone through a censorship from HR team to legal team to and so much of stuff, and they took 2 months to actually accept it. So I'm glad it was not that long over here or not any such issue. And as she pointed out about my introductions, 2 other identities I carry along with me. One is that I'm gay, and that is my sexuality, my sexual preference. And the other, I'm genderqueer, that's my gender identity. I'll get into little later what is genderqueer and all that. And I'll start it probably if you've been hearing all the speakers from yesterday, most of them talk about issues partly and partly of what they got to propose and what kind of solution it could be and all that. But largely I might today focus on the issue itself, because when Nikhil was presenting yesterday for the grievance redressal bill, he spoke about first 2 points as jankari, information. There's no information about LGBT as such widely available, first thing. And second thing, sunai, listening. People hardly listen to it because there's so much of already prejudices carried about the community by the larger so-called mainstream community. So I'll probably focus more on the issue and the genesis of the issue, and probably would love to hear from you people what could be the solution or how we tackle it or deal with it. So before I start it, I want to ask you, how many of you watched this movie called Happy New Year? Okay, interesting. I'm not a really big movie fan, or neither I know much about movies as such, but what is it that you get? As a gay person watching the movie, for me, it was possibly one of the recent very homoerotic movie. At the same time, it's a very homophobic movie. Homoerotic because I see so much of bondage between those 4 men. Poor Deepika, she's actually not seen anywhere. She's almost like left out all the time. And homophobic because there's this one particular scene where Vishal Dadnani and Anurag Kashyap are blackmailed basically because these 2 male judges are getting intimate, their video was recorded, and if we need. So what kind of message that mainstream Bollywood is giving? On contrary, a week before that, Aamir Khan hosts a show, Satyameva Jayate, where he talks upfront about LGBT. While I was watching the show, I was very keen and very being critical, possibly because most of the people don't use LGBT community kind of terms. I don't hear them, at least in the mainstream media, other than news channels, specifically. So they break the barriers, and almost, it was a brave attempt. Well received or not, I don't know, but it was a brave attempt for me at least. So 2 contradictions in the same industry, same media house. So before I get into the thing of LGBT issues, let's try and understand the terminology of LGBTQIAP, so on. There are many. It doesn't start with L and it doesn't end with T. It continues. It's a wider spectrum of sexuality, wider spectrum of gender identity, and a lot. So what does L refers to? Lesbian. G, gay. B, T, Q. Okay, sometimes queer, sometimes questioning. Not necessarily people carry the labels, they also question a lot of times. So there's also a phase that people keep questioning about their sexuality and sexual preferences and gender identity. I, intersex. A, asexuals. There can be a P, pansexuals. There can be a D, demisexuals. List goes. It doesn't end anywhere. There's so much of diversity out there. So before getting into that, there's something called, very usually heard term, homosexuality and heterosexuality. I usually ask speakers whenever I start, what language would you be comfortable with? Either Telugu, English, Hindi. I would really not love to ask that over here because I myself don't know if I have the language in Hindi and Telugu to talk about it. As he mentioned that there's no language. So when you don't have language, you don't have a voice. I come from a culture and tradition where language has been lost. I don't say there's no language, language has been lost. So we're trying to reinvent it, basically. That's my major work in Anveshi, to bring back the language of homosexuality or sexuality and gender-related stuff. So what is a homosexuality called in Indian language? It's Samalaingikata, good. What is heterosexuality called in Indian language? It's really not found anywhere. It's called Vilaingikata. Samalaingikata, Vilaingikata. In Telugu, Swalaingik, Vilaingik. So the same thing, most basically a Sanskrit root word otherwise. And we have gay, and apparently we all know, and sorry if I actually disappoint that how stereotypical gay people are projected, and I am not fitting up to the standard of that in regard with movies and all that. And lesbian, they are quite very well known and very well heard or popularly, at least with some idea, either because of the media or either because of anything out there. What is transgenders? Who do you get in mind the moment you say transgender? Probably a bunch of men looking like wearing sari at signals or in railway compartment bus, and who beg, or probably people say they demand money, they harass. It's a huge, atrocity on us and all that. So what is transgenders? Who are transgenders? To understand that, I guess first we need to understand what is gender and what is sex. Yesterday there were also a couple of JP did mention about gender. He did not mention about sexual orientation or discrimination and all that, probably. But what is gender for us? What is gender for us? What is the definition that we give to gender? When we say, no gender discrimination, Okay, male and female. I would say male and female is sex. Your biological sex. Depending on the genitals, penis or vagina that you're born with. That is something which is given to you during your birth by a doctor looking at your genitalia. Either you're male or female. And the gender, man and woman. What is that? It's something which you basically, or the society on large constructs. Gender is on large a social construct. It is not something which comes by birth. Looking at my genitalia, someone cannot tell me that how should I dress up as I grow up? How should I walk? How should I talk? What work I'm supposed to do? What work I'm not supposed to do? The whole division between man and woman. And the whole idea that man and woman form a family, then children, and all that is something very social construct. It doesn't come out of nowhere, just like that. It's not something which comes by birth. I'm taught as a child how man I should be, or how boy I should be, or how girl I should not be. It happens with everyone. We all see kids who get bullied in school when they are little feminine, little act like, not like boy or not like girl. Because it's something what we have decided, this is how a boy should act like and look like. This is how a girl should act like, look like. If I come wearing a sari for this meeting, I'm sure there would be a strange smile on all the faces. You'll basically tolerate me because you've invited me. Other than that, I would really not be entertained or really received in that way. Transgender people are people who basically have a large discomfort with the gender that is assigned to them during their birth, or because of the bodies they are born with. And the discomfort is largely with gender identity and also the body they are born with. So usually you see a lot of transgender women out there, trans women who are hijras, they beg or they do sex work. Why is that they beg? Why is that they do sex work? So sometime back in 2011, I was in Mumbai US Embassy. One of the panelists along was Lakshmi Narayan Tripathi. You probably might have seen her in Big Boss and other TV programs. So one youngster got up and asked, before you teach us about sensitivity of transgender people and all that, you need to teach your own community not to harass us on streets and rail compartments. Then Lakshmi was like patiently hearing. And then she answered back, would you be okay if I suggest you or refer you one of my chela? Would it be okay for you to have her as a maid in your house? Live about anything else, just as a maid. The answer is absolutely no. And you expect them not to beg, you expect them not to do sex work, but still live. You don't give them education, they are kicked out of schools, they are kicked out of family. And I might stand over here and talk as LGBT community, but LGB have come very later on in this country. The flag bearers of LGBT movement in this country are transgender people who are visible on streets, who are visible on roads, everywhere you go, who have been mocked, harassed, tortured, everything. And they were the flag bearers. So they led the movement. We might come as educated population out here to talk and represent, but I don't think I'm anywhere close to eligible to even talk what kind of torture and trauma they go through in their life and what kind of journey they go through. And you see trans men, trans women very regularly. Have you ever seen a trans man? You need to understand what is the difference between a trans man and a trans woman. Trans woman is a person whose gender identity has been fixed during the birth as woman. And they identify as they grow up as a man. As a man. So they are trans men. Male to female to male. There's equally male to female. But you usually see a lot of female to male. It's visible because Hijras or Aravanis, they got a culture across the country from long time. They have a social groups, they have their own families, they have Haveli system in Telangana, in specific with Nizam rule and all that. So it's easy they are visible. You don't see trans men out there. Because it's again tough for a woman to come out and say that I don't feel like a woman, I'm a man. I identify myself as a man. So you don't find them, it doesn't mean that they are not there, but they are there around. So there are trans men, trans women. So there are again other identities that fall in the spectrum of transgender. Agender, genderqueer, anti-gender, the spectrum goes on, and I consider myself somewhere gender, agender and genderqueer because I don't believe in the whole boxes of he and she. You call me he and she or it or they, it doesn't matter. I'm all comfortable as long as you call me she or he. It doesn't anywhere refer or tell me what I am and who I am. So that's my gender identity. That is where I fall in the spectrum of transgender community to an extent, if not completely. So having said this, and again also I mentioned there's no language in the country about, at least in India in specific, about LGBTQ community and all that. And there's also a lot of propaganda by intellectuals or fundamentalists out there that this is something which has been brought from Western society, UK or US, name them. They have been someone who imported the lesbianism, gayism and all that in the country. Are there any roots of LGBT in this country is a question. I'll read out something for you people. I forgot to tell what is intersex. Intersex people are people who are born not with any specific biological identities of being called as male and female. Either it can be chromosomes, the sex chromosomes count. Either it can be genitalia. Some people are born with both male and female genitalia. Usually if it is abroad, it's a decision of a doctor to operate and remove one genitalia and let the other one, either male or female, depending on the condition. But usually if it is India, they're usually thrown out of the houses. And not only in India, any other South Asian countries, usually they're thrown out of the houses or given to Hijras. So they are intersex people. They biologically don't fall in the category of either male and female. So there is something I read out. I, therefore, will do that tomorrow by which Arjuna, the son of Kunti, may slay Jayadratha before the sun sets. My wives, my kinsmen, my relatives, none amongst these is dearer to me than Arjuna. O Dharuka, I shall not be able to cast my eyes, even for a single moment, on the earth bereft of Arjuna. Who was telling this? Expressing so much of love for Arjuna. I'm sure it's not his wife Panchali or Subhadra. Any guesses? Krishna. This is exactly from Drona Parva, verse 153, where Krishna expresses his love. And exact Sanskrit word, he also says that Arjuna is half of my body, Ardha Sharira. I leave it to your interpretation, how you take it and how you understand it. I'm not getting into that at all. I don't want to be attacked by RSS people as such now. So, yeah. So, second one. This is the land where Kama Sutra was born. So, the Kama Sutra expresses one thing. It is to be engaged and enjoyed for its own sake as one of the arts. It's a science of sex. Kama Sutra talks about everything. All kinds of sex, including orgies, homosexual activities. It also talks about homosexual men living and marrying together. It talks about all of things. This was written long back, and I don't know why this is not still banned in this country. And there's other thing. You see about Shiva especially, Ardhanadishvara Tattva. Half a body of a man and half a body of woman, specifically himself and his wife, which say, or probably which I read as, the whole idea of masculinity, femininity, or something which are there in every individual, irrespective of their male or female. You cannot confine someone specific with specific gender identity should be feminine and someone should be masculine. It can't be decided. This is what Ardhanadishvara Tattva says, at least for me. And interestingly, on the same note, there's something, I don't know how many of you have heard about this, but Harihara. As Shiva has given half of his body to his wife Parvati, he has also given other half of his body to Vishnu. If you read Puranas as much as I probably have my knowledge on them, Vishnu can live without Parvati, Vishnu can live without Lakshmi, and Shiva can live without Parvati. But they cannot live without each other. That is how at least it is portrayed, and I see when he is Rama, he worships Shiva. When he is Shiva, he constantly worships Rama. And they both conceive a child Ayyappa. They both give birth to a child Ayyappa who is worshipped probably throughout South India, across. And there's also if you see there's Vishnu who turns into Mohini all the time, constantly, every time. Could be any reason. Because he loves Shiva or because he needs to save the world. He turns himself, dresses himself as a Mohini anytime required. It says how gender fluid it is. How those boundaries don't exist for them and how we have actually constructed those boundaries to us. And when in the same Mahabharata, Vishnu has turned into Mohini to marry one of the son of Arjuna. Because apparently Arjuna's son, before the war started, Krishna basically actually proposed that if you need to win the war, you need to sacrifice one from your family. Then this Aravana, he has come forward, son of Arjuna. See, I can sacrifice myself, but I'm an unmarried man. I need to be married. I need to have, one day of married life before I die. Basically, I need to have sex with a woman before I die. So the whole thing happened. So there's no one who will marry, who will give a girl to a man who is going to die next day. Who would marry? No one. So Krishna got all the opportunity. He turns into Mohini. He marries his son, Arjuna's son. Apparently, he couldn't marry Arjuna otherwise. So he marries Arjuna's son. Then after the one day of marriage, he's been sacrificed. And this one, Aravana, there's a village in Tamil Nadu. Every year, there's a 18 days festival celebrated by gathering of Hijras from across the country. All these transgender people gather in the month of April and May in thousands of numbers. And the priest of the temple ties thali to all, Mangal Sutra to all these transgender people. After the next day of his sacrifice, they all become widows. They cry, all that. So they basically treat him as their husband. It's a festival which has been happening and being celebrated from ages. And there is someone called Bahuchara Devi, who is a goddess of transgender, also called as, if you go to Bahuchara Devi, it's a temple in Gujarat, they have a website, and she's in literal sense considered as a goddess of castration for men. Well written in the website. So that's one. So if I go on saying, then there is Panchasutra, there is Panchatantra, which talks about a lot of homosexual characters in their stories and all that, and Ayyappa and Vavar, their story, and go on, pick up whole Mahabharata, which is called as Panchama Veda. I don't find even a single character in that movie, in that whole story and epic as any possible way straight. There is incest, there is polyamory, there is everything possible. And that is the reason I guess RSS can pick up Gita or anything as its book, but they'll never pick up Mahabharata. Because it gives all the freedom for you to actually can experiment, explore, and everything in your life. And there is Khajuraho, Ellora, all these things. You go, you see literally sex depicted in the sculptures out there. Very well, very much. Between men, between women, all kind of things. So where is this, the whole idea that it's been brought from somewhere is something a big question. We need to ask ourselves. This is not something which is, at least for me, when I was born, I always seen a man and woman as a family, bringing up children and all. I've never seen two men together. I've never seen two men bringing up children, having called as a family. So where did I even get the idea that I could be gay, or someone did not teach me? And now what does medicine say? Science is like, yeah, I spoke about little religion. And in the sense, talking about religion, how much it is factful or not factful, one thing we need to understand is that there is nothing called just fiction. There is nothing called just fiction. Fiction also evolves out of some relevance in the society, which is already existing. Fiction doesn't come out of nowhere. Your imagination has some roots to the society and the life you live. So fiction has a thing. Even if I believe or don't believe in the whole scriptures, there is some relevance. They spoke about these things because they were there. And what does science say? For a long time, science has an idea that homosexuality is a sickness to be cured, and there's a huge lot of psychiatry science and electroconvulsive therapies, reparative therapies to use on gay men and lesbian women. And especially in lesbian women in Africa, there is something called as corrective rape. Sometimes some parts of India also, corrective rape. Basically, you can rape a woman if she's lesbian and see if her sexual orientation changes after the rape. Which very much well accepted in the society by norms and all that. So American Association of Psychiatry in 1973 has proposed that to remove homosexuality and gender identity issues from the list of their disease classification and all that. So it was voted in 1974 and it was eventually removed. Later on, World Health Organization also considered homosexuality as a part of human diversity and blah blah, and they removed it from the list of the diseases, International Classification of Diseases. What is the stand of India? Stand of Indian Medical Council of Medical Council of India. What was its stand? So it has adopted same WHO thing with little amendments, whatever. There are two categories in the curing of gay people as such in this country. One is syntonic, one is ego dysyntonic. Syntonic are people who are gay or homosexual or heterosexual or anything and don't have a problem with their gender identity or either with their sexual orientation. So they can live happily and all that. But ego dysyntonic is a thing where as a gay person, if I have a problem with my sexuality and if I wish it can be changed or it should be changed, I can approach a doctor and they can treat me. So there are two distinctions. So in a huge heteronormative, patriarchal, heterosexual society, I would never imagine a heterosexual man going and telling that, oh, I have an issue with my sexuality, could I be homosexual? Or can I be changed into gay? I don't see that. Because there is no such pressure, no such trauma, no such judgment which acts on that person. Because it's all okay to be heterosexual, which is not so with homosexual. Which is not with being gay or transgender or anything. So you're end of the day forced to go to the hospital. And also, not because the individual might go. Who decides that what I need to be in this society as a kid, at least? It's my parents. No one else. I mean, I don't have any right to say if I'm all right or okay or not. It's my parents who will decide, who will tell. So, it's my parents who will take me to the doctor. There's a 29-year-old man, yesterday, 2 days before there was a crisis which has come. 29-year-old man has been taken to doctors because he's not acting like a man. And the doctor what prescribes? Some antipsychotic drugs. Oh, there are well-reputed doctors across the city in well-reputed hospitals sitting who claim that they can cure homosexuality. And they put you through electroconvulsive therapies, ECTs, electric shocks, basically. All this, which damages a person for a lifetime. It's a damage for a lifetime. What you do also with the kids in the school who are little feminine or who are little boyish in case of girls is something also very lifetime damage. You want to straighten up a person who is not the so-called straight for the rest of his life in the whole agenda of correcting that one particular person because he's not acting like a boy or girl. And neither teachers will talk about it in school, neither parents will talk about it because parents also have this expectation that how their children should act like. Cousins or friends, nothing. The constant bullying which happens at schools just because they are feminine or they don't fall in the either category of male and female is something so violent that I did not realize that 18 years of my life that I was actually being bullied. I thought they were actually correcting me because that's which has been told to me. So, is this homosexuality all a curse or a blessing, whatever, to the whole Homo sapiens themselves? No, not really. It's found across the 1500 species of animal kingdom. Very scientifically recorded with 500 species, including lions, elephants, giraffes, swans, mammals, birds, insects, reptiles, across the animal spectrum, they have been recorded. Very well. So, this is something which science says. And we all might be recently also hearing about something, or from past 1 year been hearing in news about something called IPC section 377. What is this section all about? So much of fuss and so much of sensationalism about this section, IPC section 377. I'll read out the section for you. It's a very small section, 6 lines, not more than that. The heading of the section starts as unnatural offenses. Unnatural offenses. 2 statements. First one, whoever voluntarily has carnal intercourse against the order of nature with any man, woman, or animal shall be punished with an imprisonment of life or with imprisonment of either description of term which may extend to 10 years and shall also be liable to fine. And the explanation of the section. Penetration is sufficient to constitute the carnal intercourse necessary to the offense described in this section. So it's a 6-line section basically which decides a lot about a lot of people in the country. The 2 interesting terms in the whole section, one is carnal and another is nature. What is carnal? Carnal is basically a sexual desire. A desire for flesh. It's a sexual desire. That's a standard meaning. The section did not bother to really provide any meanings or anything as such. So there's standard dictionary meanings. What is nature? Plants, animals, everything around as nature. Another definition of a standard definition of a nature is something, the innate what am I, what I feel about myself, what I express as myself, which comes from my own self, is also my nature. So there are 2 definitions. So what does this section exactly say? So any sex against the order of nature. So where does this section come from actually? Where does actual Indian Penal Code comes from? Yeah, Lord Macaulay. Lord Thomas Macaulay is the one who designed Indian Penal Code long back, which was imposed in 42 colonies which British was ruling back then. So basically this is something which has come from Western, not LGBTQIA or anything. This is something which has come from Western community or law as such. And what is this? This law comes from a very typical understanding of Victorian era, or rather say a Catholic understanding of what sex is or could be. And a Catholic understanding of sex, as much as I know, is that any sex that doesn't lead to progeny, that is children, is unnatural. So, having sex with condoms is unnatural, and it's a crime. Oral sex is crime. Anal sex is crime. So it basically gives you a script what you can do in your bedroom and not with your partner in all consent. So you need to follow the script. If you cross the script, if you violate the script, you'll be jailed. So, okay, this is something which brought by Britishers. What is the status in the own British or England? They've removed this law in 19th century. And they've legalized same-sex marriages sometime back last year. Across the country, if you take a lot of countries are changing, France, Germany, Netherlands, Sweden, Switzerland, Canada, in 33 states in US. So it has changed. This law has been taken up and been revoked, and people can live freely, people can equally as equal citizens of the country. That's the status in other countries, but that's not same in India, which changed a little bit for a little file in 2009 by Delhi High Court judgment. So there's a judgment of probably 115 pages, which states how this section violates human rights and right to life, right to expression and all that. And Delhi High Court has struck down this judgment. Having that, all so-called fundamental forces of this country which never come together have come together for one cause, to put up a petition in Supreme Court. You need to see the list of the petitioners. From Christian organizations to Islamic organizations to all religious organizations come together collectively saying that we don't accept this judgment. And Supreme Court, after hearing for 4 years, just before the day the judge who is supposed to give the judgment is about to retire, he gave a judgment in 2013. Writing down in all possible opposite language this 115 pages judgment and some 105 pages judgment, saying that Section 377 is all rightful. And also one thing you need to understand, Section 377, it is not something which is applicable only to LGBT community. It is very much applicable to heterosexual people also. What kind of sex you have is something which is very much applicable to you as much as anyone else. So in 2013 December, this High Court judgment was struck down and the 377 has been re-implemented. You might have heard a recent case in Bangalore. There's a man, techie, who was arrested. So there was this man who got married, 6 months to a year, not intimate with his wife, not physical with his wife. He is feminine, as the wife expresses it, and he uses a lip gloss, makeup, and all that. And with no physical intimacy for 6 months or 1 year, she got very worried and all that, gone to his parents and asked, what is this happening? Then they blamed her that it's your mistake if you're not able to attract my son. And then she gone back. She has been listening from other women, neighbors otherwise, that your husband is getting a lot of male friends to home. And whenever she used to come early from work, he used to come late. Whenever she used to come late, he used to come early. So that's the case as at least she expressed. And she installed cameras in the house and left to her parents' house for a while. After 10 days, she comes back and she sees she is aghast and she lost him. Does she see her husband having sex with another man or being intimate with another man in her own house? She rushes to the police station, lodges a complaint saying that my husband is involving in unnatural acts and all that. That's the complaint reads, that the copy of the complaint reads as. So who should I blame over here? Should I blame the woman for being so insensitive and going and actually lodging a case, not being well informed? Or should I blame the man who married and not being intimate with her, who cheated her literally? And the parents who got him married, who probably never asked if he's gay or straight or what is his interest in? Who should I blame? Where the blame goes? Parents, okay. Society. I cannot blame parents. I'll not blame either the woman over there who was cheated, not even the man who was not able to say that he's gay. Because they live in such a kind of society where they are not allowed to talk about these things. My dad tries his best to get me married to a girl even today after going all around public saying I'm gay. He still believes that a woman can come and marry me. I'll not say that he wants to spoil the girl's life. He just wants to fit in the whole structure of normalcy in the society. So, saying all this, listening to all this, 2009, 2000, there's another judgment which has come in 2014. Third gender. There's a huge conflict about, at least personally, I have a conflict with the whole judgment, is that, what is this third gender? First gender comes to be male, second gender comes to be female, certainly, and the third gender comes to be transgender. And who is going to fit in fourth, fifth, sixth? Which rat race are we running for the idea of gender which is placed in first, second, and third? Or which should be? And it says that it guides the whole government that you need to consider transgender people as third gender people. You need to give them education, jobs, reservations, everything. But yes, this judgment very clearly says we'll not talk about Section 377. So, transgender people can live, educate, employed, work, everything. But they should not have sex. Because having sex is again an offense on Section 377. And in spite of that judgment, till now nothing has happened. So after 6 months, government is supposed to implement certain things, which it did not do, and the central government has gone back to the court saying that we need clarification. We need a clarification because we did not get a clarity in a judgment of 200 pages. We did not get a piece of clarity. So we need a clarification. And in our own Hyderabad, I have a lot of trans sisters who go on sex work every day evening. From past couple of months, they've been constantly attacked by one, I don't know, should I say psycho or whatever, constantly attacked with the whole agenda of killing them basically. With beer bottles, hitting their own heads, going onto their spots. So we've been running around basically to the police stations to lodge a complaint. So 9 police stations we have gone. Almost all the police stations, they refused to lodge the complaint. They indeed actually in turn threatened us that, we'll lodge a complaint on you for attempt to murder, that you tried to kill someone on the street. This is where the whole judiciary lies in, or the police lie in. And after this judgment, after Telangana government did not constitute anything, it did not say anything, it did not mention anything, whereas Karnataka government has constituted a transgender policy draft making committee. Jammu and Kashmir has constituted a committee. Maharashtra has constituted a committee. And one of my senior bureaucratic friend, she tells me other day when I met her, can you actually bring in transgender issues in the recent women safety bill or report what you're making? She very bluntly told in my face, see, I know, I understand all these things. I have my sympathies, I have my whole support. But in government, either in central or either in the state, none of us are ready to even acknowledge your presence. Live about talking about you. We don't even acknowledge your presence. We don't even acknowledge that you are there, existing and surviving. So the whole question comes to survival, whole question comes to life, expression, being ourselves, not only as adults, but also from kids, where they're not judged to be a man and woman, to be a boy and girl, where they're not tortured for the same thing. There are Yogyakarta principles, there are United Nations Human Rights Commission's document which states all about human rights possible, which all states about LGBT rights possible, which doesn't happen anywhere in this country, which doesn't take place anywhere in this country. Because we fail to understand what, even, for example, even I place myself as the third person, I fail to understand what as a community or as individuals they are trying to talk and say. And the kind of the society we live in, we don't talk about sex. Till 18, I never knew that you need to have sex for kids. I thought you get married and God gives you kids. Till I was 18. Because I was never told about it. I was never informed about it. And when I need to come out to my dad, I don't have any language to talk. I need to talk in Telugu, crude Telugu. I need to actually come out and tell that I don't like women, I like men. The kind of complications you put individuals because they don't fall in the idea of normacy and the idea of mainstream is something complicated. The whole idea of what is normal, what is abnormal is something very complicated, and I fall out of normalcy today. I know that very well. And I get subjected and judged for that, or the whole community for that sake, the whole LGBT for that sake gets judged all its life. So what do we do is something I don't know. We've been constantly doing, if I can stand at a place right now and talk, because it's a long journey for us as individuals, we go through, as community we go through, where we try doing things. 2013 we did our first Pride March in Hyderabad. 2014 the second Pride March. And the same Lamakan, we had a queer carnival, the first time ever in Hyderabad, which was attended by roughly some 500 to 700 people. So we've been doing activities, we've been doing things, trying to engage, and I did my best also to engage with possible religious organization, including Catholic Church and RSS, and Ramakrishna Math, where I've been actually barged in and tried to speak, and they did all they could do to kick me out. So we have been doing our best, but as long as we don't have ears to tell, there's nothing we can do. There's someone who is ready to listen, then we'll sit and talk. We'll have a dialogue against all the prejudices, against all the judgments, against all the odds we carry on against each other. There's some interesting quote which says, diversity may be the hardest thing for a society to live with, and perhaps the most dangerous thing for a society to be without. If you all people have a problem with RSS saying that every other person need to be called as Hindu because they want to bring the Hindu homogeneity, if there's a problem, then there should be equally a problem for bringing a homogeneity of heterosexuality and patriarchy in the country or in the society. Thank you.